Hello,
Hey, Ray.
Hi, Ray.
how's everybody?
Good.
Doing well. How are you?
I am,
Ray, I think you're froze. There's something wrong with my connection.
I'm not frozen.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right. I was gonna say.
No, I was just scanning through here to see who else is on.
Yeah. Right now, it looks like there's only Evelyn and Tika as official members of the group. So we're gonna be slim on a probably slim on a quorum. I was saying before you came on. Tonight's the PEC public hearing at 4:30 for the for DOE and that work group that Secretary Holodick is leading. So I would imagine there's a slew of educators. If they're in this room, they're probably also in that room.
What's the topic? Is it educator compensation?
Yeah, it's the Public Educator Compensation Commission.
Well, we weren't aware of that conflict because we could have adjusted.
I didn't know about it either. I didn't know about it either until I saw an email from Dawn to our staff about something. I really I did not know it was scheduled today until this morning. So it was a little bit too late to kind of pivot, I think.
Is that posing a conflict for you, Evelyn?
A little bit, and I have PTA at 5 and a big senior meeting at 5:45. So
Okay, so let's call the meeting to order and
Yeah,
let's.
that's good. Yep.
You're recording this, right?
Yep.
Yep.
So people that are late can get the first part of the meeting.
Yeah. Okay, our agenda, our norms are the typical. Mute yourself when not speaking. This is being recorded, and it will be posted for public viewing. If at this time, anybody who's on the work group, who's in the room, if you just throw your name in the chat for an official roll call so that we can keep track. As we said, we're going to be probably tight on a quorum tonight because of another public hearing that was scheduled at this time. It didn't really come to our notice until last minute. I mean, theirs was obviously scheduled as well, but like we didn't realize it was a conflict. Next slide. We have a lot on the agenda, but a lot of it is updates, so it should move rather smoothly. Our biggest update is really asking Katie Semmel to update us on the data dashboard. The co-chairs of the Reading Consortium are slotted to join us at some point during the meeting to kind of recap the process and funding for the initiatives from Reading. And then Jim Simmons is going to be joining us on the fly. He texted me that his son had a athletic event that he's transitioning to, and he'll be joining us as soon as he can. He does plan on joining us to give us an update on the Learning Collab. And my boost update is really, really quick. So, and then we'll get right into public comment. So that's the slot of events for today. So if we want to turn the mic over or share screen over to our data dashboard team of Katie Semmel, and thought I saw Nicole. Is that Nicole Priest Kennedy on the screen? Is she part of this conversation?
No, Nicole won't make it tonight.
Nicole won't make it tonight. Okay, so it's going to be Katie Semmel. Katie, the floor is yours.
Real quick, Jeff. So we were going to go over just the November meeting minutes. Should we just wait to see if we have a quorum and
Let's
push
wait
it
till we
to
have. Yeah,
February?
let's wait and see if we have a quorum. Haley, yep.
Sounds good. Katie, do you need to share screen?
Yep.
Okay. I'm stopping. Let me know if you have any issues sharing.
Okay. All right, let me get myself together here. Okay. So, the purpose of tonight, and sorry, I just got a new computer, so everything's a little bit different. So I might be a little bit wonky as I kind of get used to how things look. So, okay, so a quick update on the work we've been doing around the equity dashboard. I think as I mentioned in November, we defined all of the requirements. Every now and then a little bit more comes comes out through discussions. And the two deliverables that we'll have is a prototype, which I'm going to give you a demo of tonight, and then also a document that kind of puts all the technical details around what you see in the prototype. What I'd like to focus on tonight is the overall look and feel, the navigation, the general layout of our concept of the equity dashboard, and focus less on the words that are in there right now and even some of the images, because all of those are very easy to change out if we decide that we want to do that. And just to kind of reiterate some of the guiding principles, the first iteration of the dashboard, we really focused on the data that was readily available that we could get our hands on relatively quickly, and wouldn't require any schools to change procedures or do additional data collecting. But even through those conversations, we actually, this system as it is right now has over 120 charts in it. So because of the volume of charts that we defined through the focus group meetings, we really wanted to focus the layout of the site so that it wasn't super overwhelming when visitors come to it. So hopefully we've done that in this design. But you can definitely give me feedback on that. Before I actually get into it, I want to show you something first that I think will help you understand a little bit about the charts that we have. So let me just show you so that I'm not jumping all over the place. When I show you a chart, it is going to be relatively static within the design. But when it's actually developed, we'll be using a tool, High Charts, which gives us some standard graphing options that are just kind of quick to drop in and make some minor changes to. So when you see the samples of the charts within the prototype, you're going to notice there's a hamburger. Okay, so this hamburger, if you click on it, gives you the option to increase the size of the graph, print it out, download the image, download the data, show a data table, that sort of thing. So it gives some options to look at that chart a little bit differently or to download the data. Okay. The other thing that the chart will do is be a little bit dynamic in terms of giving you additional information if you point to a group of point to a data set on the chart. So this is a little tooltip that'll pop up. It just happens automatically, and that's very customizable. It can be very basic. It could have additional information that would be important in explaining what the information is. So just so that you know, as I show you the charts, this is kind of the backbone, how it would work functionally in a real production environment. Any questions about that? Okay, cool. All right. So the prototype. So I'm just going to kind of step through it. You can give me feedback if you like, ask me questions along the way. So one of the things that we really want to try to do is have a clean design that was not intimidating, that would be friendly, inviting to kind of come in. And really an important thing that the focus group wanted this site to have was the student voice. So we have some stock photos in here. You'll see there's placeholders for quotes, and we'll talk about that from students, and we'll talk about how we could potentially handle that in the future, because right now it's just stock and placeholders. So we have the name of the site, and then we have a tagline. So the tagline was determined through focus group meetings, surveys, things like that. And then there's two main data groups, student data and educator data. In the prototype, we've built out a lot of the student part to kind of give you what the general look and feel would be of the site. We would still need to do some work on the educator data. Questions before I move on? Okay. As we scroll down this page, we have a purpose statement. So this again was determined by the focus group meetings. And these images right now are intended to really tell the outcomes, like what the outcomes would be of having information around equity for the city of Wilmington students. Again, anything that you see here, these can all be changed out if you know, the images don't speak to people, if the colors don't speak to people, all of that can be changed. And I'm just going to keep going unless you guys stop me. Okay. This could even have, right now, the prototype doesn't have this, but this could have information off to the side that explained a little bit more about health and well-being, building relationships, personal growth, and then the ultimate, you know, goal of educational achievement. Okay. The next section of the homepage has a definition of equity. Again, this, I think we took this right from the Reading Consortium work. And then the next section just has additional information that we want to make sure is passing on, like who are the students that are going to be represented within the site and on the charts. We have a dashboard disclaimer that we have been using kind of this language throughout our conversations about the dashboard. And then this will have plans for the future iterations of the dashboard. Okay. And again, all the words can be switched out. Those are easy changes to make. And then we have the navigation of the site here and links to social media. Okay. Any questions? Okay, so if I click on explore student data, this is what every section of the site will look like. So there are, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 major sections of the site. Okay, so there's demographics, attendance, discipline, ELA proficiency, math proficiency, other academics. Right now, that's going to be kind of summaries around course offerings and that sort of thing. And then there'll be educator information. Every page will be laid out like this, so it's predictable, but each page will have a color theme that is consistent throughout that particular view or area. Okay, so for the quote and the picture, again, these can be swapped out if we decide that it's appropriate to do so. The idea for this is to actually get City of Wilmington students, interview them, get some quotes from them, get their pictures and put them up here. If we agree that it's okay, this could even be a link to a bio for the student that was interviewed for the site, if we wanted to go that route. So we're not limited to just this. It can always be in the next iteration. Okay, so every page is going to have an overview page, and then we can dig down deeper into more detail. So except for the demographics is high level. We don't have any specific detail pages because that's all wrapped up in the other areas of the system. You guys hanging with me so far? Okay, so let me show you kind of this change view so you have an idea of how this is going to work. This is part of the navigation through the system. So if I wanted to jump to attendance, I could click on attendance and go to attendance, or I can go to the behavior overview and so on. Okay, so let's just walk down this page first. Let me close this. Okay, all right, so this is a sample of what the higher level state and county charts will look like. So we'll have the chart of information, and it'll always be broken down by state, non-Wilmington, Wilmington, Newcastle County, Kent, and Sussex, and then broken down by the different LEA types, charter schools, traditional districts, and VOTEC. In this section on every chart would be a description of what the purpose of that chart is, and then also disclaimer information. So if, for instance, we decided that discipline data would be an end of year snapshot, so we want to make sure we put that in as a disclaimer so people don't think that it's real-time data for that. So we'll also reference the source of the data and the last time the data was updated. Okay. This section here is on the summary pages to the right of all the charts. And this would be additional links that we decide to associate with this. You know, it's whatever we decide makes sense to put on there. So if it's, in some cases, it could be research documents or legislation, or it might be websites that give additional information. So it's a placeholder, and over time we can determine what those links would be. Okay, any questions about this kind of quick overview of what the charts will look like? And Haley, let me know if I'm running out of time. Okay,
Nope, you're good.
please. Okay.
This is Kevin. I had a quick question.
Yep,
Can you
go
hear
for
me
it.
okay?
Yes.
Oh, will the charts be able to be put in a pie format or different format other than a bar?
Well, we went with bar charts for now. If it makes sense to switch out the chart type, we can certainly talk about that.
Okay.
Okay. I think what we want to try to be careful about is having a variety of different charts that makes it harder for people to interpret at a glance. So, but I think when it's appropriate to do something different, you know, we can definitely look at that. Okay, so we'll always have this higher level state and county chart. Below that, we'll have a chart by school type. And again, we're talking about demographics. So how many City of Wilmington students are in each school type? And then we'll have a gender breakdown and a race breakdown. Okay, ethnicity and special programs. So in the special programs, we're including 504 special ed, English learners, which we probably need to change to multilingual learners, speech, and then anyone with no program. So you can kind of see it on this stacked bar chart. And again, these stacked bar charts can also have tooltips to show whatever data we feel is appropriate. Okay, any questions about that?
Hey, just to clarify, what's a tooltip showing the
tooltip-
number?
Yeah, so the tooltip is if you hover over a bar, that little thing that pops up is a tooltip.
Got it. Thank you.
Katie, one thing I think maybe to clarify for anybody in the public who's watching, that this data is not this is not
Thank you.
from anywhere. This is just a demo. So don't be looking at this and thinking you got like, oh my goodness, I just saw data on there. Yeah, this is not real data. I just think
Exactly. Thank you for saying that. I meant to say it. It was in my notes and I ignored my notes. Okay, so let's take a look at the attendance overview. Okay, again, a shifting color scheme to show this is a different view that we're looking at. And so we have the high level base with the same kind of structure as what I showed you for demographics. Okay, for the overview, we did break the attendance down by lesson 5, 5 to 9, 10 to 14, 15 to 19, and 20 plus absences, just to get an idea kind of how many kids are falling into the higher ends of absences. Unexcused absences, same breakdown. Tardies, same breakdown. Okay. Now, at the top of the charts, if I click on view chronic absenteeism detail, this is what the more detailed kind of digging in chart pages will look like. All right, at the top, we'll have an explanation of the purpose of the page, disclaimers, and then a more pronounced data last updated. Again, we can have additional links on here. We're going to repeat the overall chart that we came from so that we're showing everything on the same page. And then we'll break the chronic absenteeism information down into the districts where City of Wilmington students are attending. Okay. In this instance, this is just to give you an example. This is an example in this prototype or mock-up of how a tooltip could work. In this case, again, not real data, the number of students with chronic absenteeism is less than 15. So we're going to put a statement in there showing we're not showing any more detail about that when there's less than 15 kids within that grouping of students. Okay. In this case, because it's more than 15, then we're going to give an idea of how many kids there are out of from the city of Wilmington out of the larger numbers like school population and that sort of thing. Questions about that?
Katie, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
I feel like I know we talked about this, but is there like an absence threshold where a student then becomes chronically absent or truant, and is it different per?
Yes.
school
So this
district?
is the standard
Okay.
10% or
Got it.
more days absent. So the typical school year is 180 days, but sometimes kids will come in later than the start of the school year. So we would want to look at their member days and come up with that percentage. So
Great, thank you.
okay, good question. Any other questions before I move on from this? Okay. We'll also list out all the charter schools. We flipped the chart on its side because there's so many charter schools. Okay. And then the next chart gives you the opportunity to see each of the schools within a specific district. Okay, so there'll be the ability to filter right on the chart. So if this is showing red clay, it would show all of the red clay schools. And then you could switch this chart out to show Wilmington students only or non-Wilmington students, that sort of thing. Okay. And then we'll have a data table that shows these are not real numbers, as Jeff mentioned, that show the number and percent of students with chronic absenteeism broken down by gender, race, ethnicity, and special programs. Okay, so that'll be kind of the consistent flow through each of the view areas on the site. Any questions? Okay. All right, so if we jump to behavior, again, another color scheme. All of the kids right now have the same quote, but again, like I said, that can be changed out. So we have in-school suspension by state and county, out-of-school suspension by state and county. We have in-school suspension breakdown. So we're breaking it down by less than 1 day, 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, 4 day, 5 day, 6 days. So kids can have a suspension, but it's also important to know how many days have they been suspended. So we did want to include information about the number of days because those are days they're not in school getting an education. Okay. And the same breakdown for out of school suspensions. And then these also have, let me make sure there's a link. Okay, so I don't think we have a link from these pages yet, but we'll add those. But it's the same concept. It'll be the same breakdown as the other ones. Okay, all right. And then for ELA proficiency, basically we're going to do the Smarter Balance scores for grades 3 through 8 and break that down as far as how they did on the state test, as well as for 11th graders, it'll be SAT. And we're going to use the state definition of well below, meets and exceeds. SAT doesn't actually come out with those, but it is a state kind of reporting standard for SAT. Okay, and this is showing information about students involved in intervention groups. Okay, so how many City of Wilmington students will be involved in interventions. I think that it would be what they were in at the time that the data, so this data we would refresh daily. So it's whatever the intervention they're in at that time. Questions so far? And math is basically the same. We also have an area for other academics. And so this is intended to show what courses City of Wilmington students are enrolled in. So it'll show honors, AP, IB, and dual enrollment courses, and the percentage of kids in those. Also, it'll show career and technical, and also other related arts. So what we're trying to show here is, world languages, visual arts, performing arts, those types of things. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay, and so the educator piece of this includes reporting around the personnel types that are in a building or in a district. It also will have information about educator, race and ethnicity as compared to the students. It also will have some years of service and certifications and things like that. So we still need to build that out, but it'll have the same look and feel as the student section. Okay. And that's where we are right now.
Thanks.
So,
Katie. I guess I would open it up to members of the committee of our work group for feedback and questions of Katie. I know many of you have been involved in the focus groups, and it's been ongoing, but I guess thoughts from, do you want to stick with the aesthetic look first, Katie? Like how did the feel and
Yep.
look? Okay. All right. So any members of the social determinant work group have any comments or questions for Katie?
I just had one question, and I apologize if I missed it. The tiered interventions, how is that data collected, or where is that coming from?
it's an eye tracker, so we can pull it from there.
Okay.
So one of the things that we did, once we had all the requirements, is we did have a meeting with DOE to talk about data sources. And so for each data requirement, we have a primary data source and we have a secondary data source. So the primary, it would be if DSC were to actually do the development, we would be the primary data source because we can get our hands on all of this data and we have it. So if DSC doesn't do the development, then it's going to be written in a way that someone could pick it up, and then DOE would probably be the data source, but we would support in that. But right now it lives in our eye tracker application for the majority of the districts in the state. So.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I want to say this is no small feat. I have to say, when you said that the information was going to be real time on the courses that they were in or the attendance, that being a public facing feature is going to be interesting. That's going to be something that's never been seen before. Like, I don't think. So I think it's exciting to see something coming together and having I feel like it's got a nice feel to it. I mean, I like the feel. I don't have any other feedback. I've been talking to you in focus groups, so I'm good.
Yeah.
Does anybody else want to weigh in ask questions or give their initial feedback or impressions?
I just have a quick comment. Couldn't help myself. Thanks, Ray. I'm very impressed. I've heard a lot and we've had reporting out in our large format meetings, but I haven't, gotten this close to it. So I'm very impressed.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Thank you. And the focus groups, did those include parent participants as well? We do have that sense of like what a parent, how a parent's going to navigate that. So
Right. I can respond to that. That's the next iteration of we're still in focus group mode.
Mhm.
We wanted to share some thinking. There have been in order to have access for parents. We don't want to just do daytime conversations. We need to do some evening conversations. We've had Dr. Roger Harrison, who is a clinician serving parents and families. Midra Surratt, the executive director of the Parent Information Center. Dr. Terry Lawler, who's on the line. And who am I leaving out? Those have been consistent.
Tamara,
Tamara
Mhm.
Smith.
Mhm.
Those have been consistent focus group members, and we are, and Katie can tell you that we've had many conversations about making certain not only that the parent get a chance to help to contribute and respond to the draft design. We want to give them something concrete
Yeah.
to respond to, and this we're just getting there. And in addition to the parents, students as well.
that makes perfect sense. Thanks.
Mhm.
All right.
Jack said it's okay. He likes the visual. He's looking
Too
at
good
it.
to it.
He's checking it out.
He's
If he
in
knew
it.
how to do a thumbs up, he'd be giving you a thumbs up.
Got it. We heard him say go with it, so we're ready to rock and roll. All right.
Mhm.
So
Um,
Terry, did you want to say anything that hasn't been said, or
Nope.
something for us to think about?
No, I know Katie mentioned from the outset that the pictures are going to be changed. My only suggestion would be to have the graphics match the emotion of what is said in the comments.
Right.
Right, and it's going to be the bitter and the sweet. It can't all be,
yeah.
hunky dory, because it's not.
That's
It's,
right.
it's some good news and some things that we need to do a much better job from the student's perspective.
Yep.
So to be honest and authentic.
Mhm.
Great.
Who else is up?
Uh,
This is taking a lot to get to this place, and there's a ways to go.
Yes.
So we thank Katie and her team for working with us.
and also DOE for the support with going out to enlist DSC's effort in this. I mean, it's definitely been a team effort. I know I think it's Christy Lloyd has been
Mhm.
involved with this heavily, and I think that it's
Yes, and Adrian Peoples.
Adrian Peebles,
I know
right?
lead
So-
Dr. Peoples out.
And to follow up a little bit, Tizzy, to your point, before we got to this point, this was like this was a lot of work to get here. And so to start now getting more feedback from others is really the next step. So we are moving in that, and it's definitely moving in that direction. I see Eric Buxton, Senator Buxton has his hand raised. Did you have a comment, Senator Buxton?
I do, but I'll be brief if you can hear me well.
Can hear you.
Great. I just wanted to acknowledge that I have been paying attention, working hard at speaking less and listening more. I do appreciate the invitation to come. I want to run to all things education, not necessarily to save the day, but to better understand things, and then maybe chime in a little bit. So that's my purpose today, just kind of figure out what's going on, learn a little more. I would like to learn a little bit more about what I just watched for the last half an hour in regards to, it looks like we're building a site where the public can access it and data can be presented. I don't need a clear explanation, but if that's what it is, and I just would like maybe to be directed to where I can review it when it's ready to roll.
Yeah, that's totally, you're actually accurate for your 30 minutes of practicing your new effort of just listening and not speaking. You did well. So you get an
Thank
A for the education room here. If you, when it goes live or as we move forward, we definitely make sure to include you in the work. And if you have any questions at any point, you could reach out to Haley here and we can set up a meeting to talk about where we are and what's going on with the social determinants work group as it relates to this. So that'd be Ray and myself are the co-chairs of the group. So we'd be glad to have any conversation around the project thus far.
Fantastic. Thank
Yep.
you.
Yeah, thank you. And just to acknowledge it, Tamara Smith has joined, and she's been a consistent member of the focus group for the development of the educational equity dashboard. It's not easy, family. Everybody does things the same thing in different ways.
Yeah. Yep. I
That's-
think,
Yeah, that's a
yes,
challenge.
it
Mhm.
is. And I think we've been fortunate that we've been able to get, as I say, kudos to the folks on the focus group and sticking to it and providing the feedback for the data service center team and the DOE folks to really put together something that is going to help. It's going to positively impact the community. It's going to be continue to be a hard work though. I think we still have a ways to go. I know this is just a prototype and then there's implementation. It's definitely got some stages to it that we have to continue to stay focused on. And I think that a little bit of that, Ray, if we want to pin this one or put this one off and be done with this topic, it kind of leads into I think the next topic on our agenda around, where we are as where the Reading Consortium is with the work that we've been doing. This is one of those ongoing projects that was funded early in the work from the social determinants work group. And I know we have, I believe on our agenda today, a opportunity to hear from Matt and Tizzy about where we are with the funding and the process to, once it's funded, how's it being spent or allocated for the work that it was ascribed. So I guess that said, I'm going to turn it over to Matt. I think you got the ball on this one.
Okay, I'm looking at the screen here. I'll give sort of Reader's Digest versions, and then Senator Lockman can jump in. And maybe I'll start from the bottom on developmental screenings. I know that that Dawn, who could not be at the meeting today, had some concerns more on a going forward basis in terms of additional funding needs that there might be to make sure that that the commitment to having early childhood settings do full developmental screenings for children in those centers was able to be properly monitored by the state, and also that referrals could be done properly by the districts. She's much more up to speed on those, so I think it's probably best to defer the details on that until she can be here. But again, I think her concerns were more on a going forward basis rather than proper implementation of the funding that had already been done. Continuing, I'll continue going backwards up the list. On wraparound services, there was an RFP issued for schools to be able to have an opportunity to compete to get wraparound service grants. 3 schools successfully got those grants: Coomba, Town Point Elementary, which is in Dover, and Bancroft Elementary in Wilmington. However, of those 3 schools, only Coomba actually applied for the full amount that schools were permitted to apply for, which means that there's a substantial amount of money that is still available for those grants. There was a discussion, and the Department of Education is willing to put out a second RFP. In order to do so, it needs the legislature to authorize those grants to be awarded to more than 3 schools, because as initially written, it was assumed that every school that would apply for the full amount that it was eligible to. eligible to apply for. And since that didn't happen, there's enough money left for at least one and potentially two other schools to be awarded them. So they are waiting for the legislature to authorize additional schools to be able to apply. There was some discussion last week about, before that was done, having the group from this work group that had originally come up with the proposal go back and take a look to make sure that there weren't any other changes in the RFP that might be worthwhile making, in addition to allowing more than 3 schools to apply. So I think that was a suggestion for this group, to, if we could, impose on the time of the individuals who would help come up with that, with the original proposal, to perhaps between now and our next meeting in February, go back and see whether any other changes might be worthwhile. That was something that was worth doing. On the full day pre-K, there are some concerns about the RFP that was just issued for providers to be able to apply for those funds. And I think there's an intention to talk to the Department of Education about the concerns with the RFP that was issued, and to try to address some problems that we see there. The four facilities that had originally applied for those funds are very pleased with receiving them. They've put them to good use. They're paying their frontline providers better compensation, and they believe as a result are able to better recruit and retain good frontline providers. They're able to offer full day programming to a number of students who previously they could only offer part day programming. So for the providers who had already applied for and received the funds, it's going well. But there are, like I said, some concerns about the RFP that just went out to a much broader audience for the remainder of the funds. And I think that's still, I'll defer to Senator Lockman, but I think that's still an open issue.
Is that my cue?
Mhm.
Yes.
Oh, well, I mean, I was not planning to add extensive commentary. Matt obviously has a lot of insight into development and how we've been going. I was able to sit in on some of the feedback that we proactively solicited feedback from, schools and districts as to what, sort of what gives in terms of barriers to folks seeking these funds, as well as what they're experiencing, in terms of barriers to implementation that are part of their reasoning for not applying in some cases, or in some cases, not being awarded. I think Matt actually touched on pretty much everything that we heard. And I think, as Haley noted in the chat, that's going to be compiled and something that we'll, be able to actually have in hand to read. But basically, I think just the bottom line is, we want to be able to maintain these resources and keep them available, for our schools to utilize. And in order to do that, we're obviously going to need to make sure that they are being taken advantage of, and that the parameters that they're being put forward with are in sync with the way schools actually are in practice. So I think we're having a little bit of a learning process and learning curve there. So those are just the thoughts I have to add, Matt, because I think you touched on all the specifics of the feedback we're hearing. And unless anyone has any specific questions for us.
No, I think that was helpful. I mean, it was a little bit of a little more detailed than the conversation at the last full body Reading meeting we had in town, where we talked a little bit about where we were with the money that was available and why was it so much still available, I think was really the upshot. And I think soliciting feedback from those who would be seeking the support was very timely, and I think it was well received, at least I know, in some of the folks that I heard from. So I think it'll be helpful moving forward. It really will be about staying the course and really getting back to the work thoughtfully. So I know that feedback request came out to my group, and I'm sure it went to the others. So I think that was appreciated.
Great.
I see Terry Dr. Lawler has her hand raised. Terry, did you want to chime in?
Yes, just a suggestion. I don't know if you all do a pre-bid meeting, but it might be helpful. We've had similar challenges with people kind of leaving money on the table, and found that doing a pre-bid meeting, before your deadline, just to give some guidance, answer questions live, is helpful.
Thank you for that. I mean, and I believe DOE is doing those, and I think one of the complicated things in this situation is that we, are contributing to the epilogue language that drives the RFP, but we are not, the administrators of the RFP or the decision makers of the RFP. So, we certainly want to make sure that that's clear for folks. We're not pulling those strings and making the decisions about who's awarded and who is not, but we do have an opportunity, or I do certainly as a legislator have an opportunity to adjust the language that drives the RFP that comes out. And of course, to give the feedback, to the agency about how they solicit and educate and work with potential awardees. So that's great feedback.
Thanks, Terry. Ray, I don't know, did you have any? I'm a little distracted by Haley's cat. I'm
I
sorry.
was getting ready to say,
I'm
Jack is one thing, now the cat's one.
I know. I was
It's
like,
dinner
I-
time.
I thought I was seeing things for a moment, but I clearly was not.
Hey, Jeff, I don't know how to raise my hand,
Okay.
but
Speak.
yeah,
There you go.
just picking up on what I think the point that Terry just made is really important with respect to these pre-K funds. And just to sort of take it a step further, my hope is that once we do get squared away what this RFP should say, that beyond just a pre-bid meeting, that there will actually be like a real effort by DOE to go out and have some additional sessions for pre-K providers, because this is new and this is different from what has been available to them in the past.
Yeah.
And so I think that, efforts above and beyond even a pre-bid meeting would be, very helpful in this case, because there are providers who might be eligible for these funds who are serving the kids who we are hoping will be served by these programs. And we just need to let them know, what this is and that it's available to them.
Yeah, I think that in my experience, we want to do that blitz before the pre-bid, and then the pre-bid is where they're able to speak freely. And like you said, after the bid goes out, there's nothing wrong with us notifying them that this is now out there. I think it's getting any more detail outside of the bidding process is always one of those ones that, again, I'm talking only from a facilities purchasing standpoint. I don't know what it looks like for this kind of services, but I think that it's easy to push out there a little bit more readily in those spaces. And it depends on who's answering the questions for the bidding process. If it's the keeper of the RFP versus someone who's just kind of like, hey, this is what this really means from the outside, kind of talking them through it. So I think that that's something. Cora, I see you nodding your head and kind of raising your hand there.
I was just gonna say, I'm not familiar at this point with the kind of timeline for the RFP for the pre-K. I'm obviously aware of it, but I'm not sure if the feedback will be shared or if we should connect with someone specific to kind of hear how the process went the last time, and just maybe how we might be able to support, so that it is getting accessed and information and supports being provided. So if there's, feel free, whomever, to reach out to me, or I'm happy to reach out to someone, but I'd love to kind of hear kind of in detail the feedback to see where we might be able to help.
Thanks, Cora.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we definitely want to reach out to you, Cora.
Mhm.
Okay. Sounds
Yeah,
good.
make sure that nothing gets lost in translation.
Yeah.
And yeah, right. And I advocated from a provider, a service provider's perspective, to streamline the application process. So applicants were not having to complete two separate applications to serve 3 and 4-year-olds. So we just want to make sure that the distinctions in terms of the expectations for the dollars that Reading advocated for, that doesn't get distilled and become generic.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, well, just whomever, reach out to me at any time, and then we can kind of go through it a little bit more in detail, and then we can see how we can support.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything else for Matt or Tizzy related to writing initiatives in the funding? Great.
Not from me.
Not for
No,
you,
I
Matt.
just
Matt,
would
listen,
say,
you're good, Matt. Oh, Tizzy and Jack, they're up.
Yes, no, I would just say stay tuned in terms of that compiled feedback and us working with you all to make sure that the forthcoming RFPs are true to the initial vision that came from this work group.
Great. Thank you very much thank you for the report. The next update, we wanted to touch base with Jim Simmons, who's joining us on his phone tonight, so I don't think he knows he's up next, but he does now because I'm calling him in. Jim, we're just, if you could take, briefly kind of walk us through where we are with the Wilmington Learning Collaborative, and then, field maybe a few questions from members of the committee, the work group.
Absolutely. So first, thank you for having myself, and I'm gonna say, and Cora, as we are sharing and taking the lead and trying to support the newly formed council for the WLC. So I think that it's always important, especially in this time, for me to start with, I think the expectations on why folks are like, what's going on, or this concern that work isn't going on, is when it got delayed from a June/July vote for the MOU.
Oh, of course
And so one of the, I'm gonna say, oxymorons that occurred was there was all this community engagement and community partners and meetings weekly, sometimes twice during a week, and people felt completely engaged and enamored in opportunities to hear. And then once that was passed by all 3 districts, then it looked like we went radio silent. And what actually happened was that time was needed in order to name the additional members to the council. So if you're not aware, there's 3 superintendents, the 3 board members who oversee the city portion of their district, which makes up 6. There's 3 parents, 1 from each district. There's a mayor appointee, a secretary of ed appointee, and then a student representative. But in the student representative pool, there's 3, but only 1 has limited voting rights. That would be the senior. The other 2 would be a sophomore and a junior, in the hopes that they would stay as they matriculate through high school and move up on the board. So when the senior graduates, the junior would move into the voting position, and then it would get replaced by a sophomore from that district, and then continue that cycle. So over the past, I guess, when you think about December, winter break, and then into January and almost February, there were maybe 2 meetings. Cora can step in if I misspeak, but I think there were 2 meetings where we were just working to figure out what we could do so that once the council was completely formed, they would have a chance of hitting the ground running on certain topics. There was also some topics that didn't require a council's vote that we asked the liaisons, we have a liaison from each district, to work on, i.e. they went through the process of collecting parent names, naming parents, because we didn't need a council vote for that. They also created a pool of students, which the council will now vote on at one of their upcoming meetings to select the students from the district. We started to, we created a draft of the job description for the executive director. We know the hiring of the right person is going to be essential to the success of the collaborative. And so we worked on a job description, made some edits with the understanding that we couldn't vote on it, 1, because there wasn't a full council and a quorum, but more importantly, the 3 of the people that were missing were parents. And it was important in the formation of this collaborative that the voice of the parents was essential. So to have any decisions made without their input, I think we all thought would have been a mistake. So having said all that, they met as a full council for the first time a week ago on the 13th. So maybe almost 2 weeks ago, 10 days ago on the 13th as a full council. They're still waiting on a chair appointee, which comes from the governor's office. We hope to have that this week. I know that I spoke to him last week, and he has, got some names that she's jostling with and having some conversation with those people. I would not want to communicate that at this time. So we're waiting to name a chair, but in the interim, they've started to work on some agenda items. They have a tentative or interim secretary, which is one of our parents, Jeannie Yao. She comes out of Red Clay. So she's fulfilling the role as the secretary until an executive director is hired. They've decided that they're going to meet twice a month because of the delay in the vote. That year planning now gets shrunk into 6 months. And so they thought meeting every month wasn't sufficient. So they're going to meet twice a month. The next meeting is January 26th, this Thursday coming up, and then the following is on February the 9th. Additionally, they also added work groups or committees. There are 3 of them. One is around the job description for the executive director and the process of hiring. The second one is around creating bylaws. And the third one is on hiring a project manager that can help them through the work as they work through their board and board trainings, et cetera, not just that piece, but all of those things in general. So that's where it stands. I think that once these double meetings happen per month, we'll start to see some work and hear more news. But again, the most important part is the hiring of an executive director. And from a former district and building leader, I'd say that while we got to make sure we get the right person and we know it's essential in terms of a timeline, I've said this in the previous meetings that we've got to be also cognizant to make sure that we take our time and we just don't settle. And so, I've always said hire slow and fire fast, right? And so I think we got to be cognizant to make sure we get the right person because that person is essential. We are waiting in the wings of support at the department in terms of some of those schools in the collaborative are identified as either CSI or TSI schools. And then what does that support look like in terms of how do we support them with their additional funding? Like a report on how the funding would work. We met as a work group at the department today to start coming up with a presentation and helping them around how the funding will work in terms of the process of the funding and a budget and et cetera. So I know that I spoke, that's a lot of words and a lot of talking over a lot of conversation. So first, Cora, did I miss anything? And then secondly, if there's any questions or anything somebody would like me to revisit as I went over that with a broad stroke of a paintbrush.
I think you did a good overview, Jim.
Jim, thanks a lot for that overview while you were hopefully not driving on 95 or 495, but that will.
I am actually in my driveway at this point. I didn't want to go into the house and transition, but I was listening to the other presentations
All right.
and I was on 95, but my camera was off. I don't know if Katie's still on the call. I was going to put Katie on a little bit of miniature blast. If you're not aware, Katie and I went to school together since 7th grade. And we were the president and vice president of student council. And so
And I'm sitting here, Jim, going, God, look at us. Us, the Mount Pleasant grads.
Oh my
Mount
Lord.
Pleasant grads. Listen, it doesn't get any better than being a Green Knight, Katie. So
Exactly.
nice to see and hear you again.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Like, look, Jim, thank you so much for the overview, like the recap of what's been going on. I think if you've been following in the paper, some of the things you've mentioned or referenced, but a lot of the whys and the what's behind it don't get shared as readily or as accurately as what you just did. So I do appreciate that. Does anybody from the work group,
anytime.
Anybody have a question for Jim specifically related to Wilmington Learning Collab or the information he presented? Ray just put a
I
chat
just
in
saw
there.
Ray's text.
Yeah,
Yeah, there is. I thought that there was an announcement through OGov, and I can certainly forward that to you. I know that there was something on their social media pages. What we did around the announcement of the appointees, Ray, was we wanted to give each district and OGov and the mayor's office a chance to make their announcement first. I think they've all done that. And then the governor's office, through their social media page, did present the whole board. Cora and I have that as well. So one of us can send that to the group. I don't know if you want that to go to the chair and then you can get it out to the whole group, or how you want to move with that, Jeff.
Thanks, Jim. We'll get it from you or Cora, and then you send it to Haley and she'll be able to get it squared away.
Perfect.
Since no one, I mean, there is a kind of, in my mind, Jim, I'm not going to let you off the hook too easy. There's a lingering question, I think, as the Wilmington Learning Collaborative moves forward, is what is the role, the relationship between it and the Reading Consortium, or someone like us, the Social Determinants Work Group, more specifically, like where we're like kind of in the weeds a little bit, doing some work that's, district like, school building like, support like for the community. How is that question in the docket for the group to address, or is there, where does that sit right now in the queue in terms of talking about it? I guess maybe
It's a great question, and it's been an ongoing question, and the answer is still the same and standard, that we hope and planned on that whatever we did in this Wilmington Collaborative would be an interim step into and help support the redistricting decision that comes, or redistricting suggestion that comes out of Reading. And the easiest way to explain it is if we go backwards. If you remember that Red Clay, I believe in one of the iterations prior to, was going to take on the city, and then they said the buildings were an issue. So OGov fixed the buildings. And so now we hope to eliminate that low hanging fruit by the governor's office taking on renovating buildings and doing that at 100% state funded. So that aligned to that previous decision. In this case, we're saying we don't know where the recommendation where Reading will land, but whatever that recommendation is, we hope that this partnership that the three districts already have will make that transition much smoother, and that they've been at the table together working on improving outcomes for students in the city, working together with the understanding that someone could be taking on a larger role, someone or some district may be taking on a lesser role. So we too do truly feel like this collaboration allows the supporting of the recommendation coming out of Reading. In terms of the work groups, in this case, the social determinant and others, I think that they all addressed the issues that are much bigger than, because redistricting isn't going to fix the problem. The work groups and the task by each of the work groups addresses some of those problems, so that whatever the recommendation around redistricting is, those other factors are being addressed in the interim and going to be ongoing. So we believe and that it's in alignment with whatever the recommendation that comes out of Reading is. And if the recommendation doesn't get approved, because we know that it's not, you guys are just making a recommendation, we're still in a position where we're still working ongoingly in a collaborative manner to improve outcomes for those students in the city.
Yeah. Thanks, Jim. I guess again, it still sounds like there's still a lot going on around the dynamic. And like you said, as long as I think it does need to become, I don't know, clearer at some point. And I guess it's for a larger body conversation with the Reading. Hopefully, Matt and Tizzy, take that back. Cause I do think that it's the apple or the cart before the horse. Which one comes first? Which one supports the other? I'm a superintendent, so I'm sitting on the sideline watching what's going on, and I'm seeing the Wilmington Learning Collab really establish itself as a body within the city of Wilmington. But then, to hear you say like the Reading Consortium, then the Reading group's going to make the recommendation that they carry out, or that they're going to merge together without some kind of joint effort that could be on a train wreck. That could be on a track for a train wreck in terms of getting to the end goal, because there's different players at the table. So I guess
Well, the good part, to your point, you're correct, but the good part is that those players are overlap. So
Yeah,
i.e. the three
yeah.
superintendents
Yeah,
are on the Reading Consortium. So I can't imagine knowing the three of them and their intelligence level and their thought process around system change, that's not going to be at the forefront of their thought as well.
yeah. Agreed.
One other thing I would like to mention, Jeff, before I turn it over to your agenda, if there's no other questions, is there's also a group of folks were invited by Empower, who's run and supported a number of these innovation zones. There was a trip to Springfield that they invited us to. A number of people went, but it was short notice, so it wasn't well attended. There's a follow-up invitation to a zone in Fort Worth. Now, those zones are different than ours, but it gives us a chance to talk about implementation, talk about impact, and those sort of things. And that's scheduled for February 16th. So there is a list of people who are attending from each of the three districts. So just wanted the people, if you hear that out in the community, to know what that trip is about. That is not a sponsored trip by DOE, nor is it just for our collaborative. It's an invitation from districts and states around the country to come and see the innovation zone who are either in a zone currently or thinking about using that model.
Thanks, Jim. All right. Look forward to continued updates, Jim, and we'll let you know
Absolutely.
as we move forward in the spring, if we want to circle back with you to see how things are going. And now that, since Cora, I think you're on this work group, so Cora's right here too, so we definitely have another direct line, so that's great. Thank you. Boost 22 and 26 update. This is going to be real quick. We did receive the final report from the University of Delaware for the Boost 22 data. And they're right now working on a one-pager high-level overview of the data so that each of the superintendents involved in the project can present that data to their school boards. And then once the school boards are shared with that data, then we're going to release that more broadly to the community. The data is definitely exciting. It definitely continues to reiterate what Jim brought up about the collaboration of the districts and the chiefs who are working in the city. So I think that's the status right now. And we are working on the Boost 26, which is our current ninth graders. We do have last year's ninth graders, what their academic outcomes were at the end of last school year as a baseline, without actually doing any concerted focus effort on focusing on ninth graders, getting them to 10th grade. And then at the end of this year, we plan on pulling the ninth graders data to see where did they land and what happened to them with this effort to really focus on getting ninth graders to be successful 10th graders. So we have baseline data. We're now just in the works. Each district is kind of throwing in our resources with either communities and schools or some other engaging activities across district lines to kind of really hook our ninth graders. I think while it wasn't specific to ninth graders, Durrell's there was a King event in the city last week that was to try to bring together students from the city of Wilmington. And I know JDG was really supportive of working across all of our districts to get students to that event who would benefit from the guest speakers in the activities that were there. So it's really just about making those things happen quickly when you have the opportunity. And sometimes it helps to have a superintendent in the room or a director in the room when you're talking about transportation and coverage and those kinds of things. And so it's kind of staying attuned to each other's activities. And so we're excited about Boost 26 to see where it lands at the end of the school year. But as soon as we have the one pager and we present it to our boards in February, I'll make sure that it gets out to this group and we talk a little bit more about the findings from that report. And that is it. We now have public comment. If there's an individual from the community who would like to comment, you get a 2-minute comment. If you're representing an organization, there's a 3-minute public comment window. Open up the floor. Haley, has anybody messaged you, chatted you? I feel like we were a little bit free flowing here today, so I feel like most people should have felt comfortable kind of chiming in at some point. I saw some chats going back and forth.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any right now.
Okay. Going once, going twice. Okay. That said, we are going to convene the meeting and we'll be, I don't believe we scheduled February yet. I think I'm a little bit gun shy of scheduling meetings now since everybody's scheduling meetings all day long every day. And Ray and I and Haley will regroup and pick a date that we think squeezes in with all that's going on with the legislative session, and we will get started for February and March. Try to get those two scheduled. All right, Ray, do you have any closing words?
No, I'm good. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us this evening. Take care. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, thanks.
Good night.
Have a good night, everyone.